Welcome to Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak, presented by Aura. My name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks radio network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports here in the 97.1 The Freak studios after the Mavericks get the 108-106 win at home over the Golden State Warriors as the Mavericks move to 47-30 on the season, a season high 17 games above 500, now 24-15 at the AAC this season without Luka Doncic, who missed the game due to knee soreness, without Maxi Kleber, who was out with back spasms. It didn't matter as the Mavericks were able to use their defense and some timely shot making, namely from P.J. Washington, who played his best game as a Dallas Maverick, scoring 32 points and getting the game-winning layup with 4 seconds left off of Tim Hardaway Jr. assist. The Mavericks defensively ensuring that they get the ball out of Stephen Curry's hands. Klay Thompson misses what would have been a game-winning three-pointer for the Warriors as the Mavericks snap Golden State's 6-game winning streak. And for the second time, they snap a long winning streak from a Western Conference opponent. Of course, the Mavericks ended the Rockets' 11-game winning streak. They've lost 4 straight games since then. And now the Golden State Warriors, they end their 6-game winning streak as the Mavericks played the Warriors for the second time in 4 days, had a chance to end what was their 4-game winning streak, couldn't do it. But then this time around, ended their 6-game winning streak as the Mavericks now strengthen their hold on the 5th seed in the West. They got some help in the form of the San Antonio Spurs, who took out the New Orleans Pelicans on Friday night, and also the Sacramento Kings losing on the road to the Boston Celtics, which means for the Mavericks, who already had the tiebreaker on the Phoenix Suns as they do the Mavericks to climb to the 4th spot in the West, is looking more and more unlikely as the season goes on. But at the same time, it appears that they have completed and getting closer to completion, I should say, of locking up a top 6 seed in the West, which is extremely important because if you finish top 6 in the West, that means you get a week off before the playoffs start just about to be able to get yourself ready for your first round series. But with the Kings losing and more importantly, the Pelicans losing, the Mavericks clinched the tiebreaker over the Pelicans as they will have a better division record than New Orleans by the time we get to season's end. So a terrific night for the Mavericks all the way around, getting the win without Luka Doncic and Maxi Kleber, getting some help in the form of the San Antonio Spurs and the Boston Celtics to continue to strengthen their hold and a top 6 seed in the West. And moving forward for the Mavericks, it's about finding different ways to win. And in this game, they got the best game that we've ever seen from P.J. Washington in a Maverick uniform. My man dropping 32 points, as I mentioned, with the game winner. 32 points, 5 rebounds. He had 3 assists, 5 steals in the game, 2 blocks. He knocked down another 5 3-pointers in the game as well. Coming into the game against Golden State, P.J. Washington in his last 5 games was shooting nearly 46% from 3. In this game was absolutely spectacular. Again, shooting nearly 63% from downtown, going 5 of 8 from 3, as he was 12 of 18 from the field. And he was the guy, along with Kyrie Irving, who had 26 points in the game, who was able to step up and provide that scoring punch that was needed without the services of Luka Doncic, who missed the game on Friday night. But this was a game where the Mavericks had to find themselves battling back throughout the course of the game, as the Mavericks, as you look at the game, especially in the first quarter, at one point found themselves up by 16 at 29-13. P.J. Washington got off to a really good start for the Mavericks, but at the same time, defensively let go of the rope in that final 4 minutes and 14 seconds as the Warriors went on a 19-2 run, capped off by a Chris Paul three-pointer at the buzzer to give the Warriors what was a 32-31 lead at the end of the first quarter, as Chris Paul was absolutely spectacular. He got 5 points in 4 minutes and was a plus 17 for the Golden State Warriors, as I mentioned, going on a 19-2 run to close out the last 4+ minutes of that first quarter, as the Mavericks, who had gotten off to a terrific start in the game, was hot from three. In fact, started 7 of 8 from the field. PJ Washington was shooting the ball extremely well, had 3 3-pointers in that first quarter alone, had 11 points. Kyrie Irving had 9 as well. And offensively, the Mavericks got off to a terrific start, and you felt like, okay, this was a game that the Mavericks would be able to control by the way that they were shooting. They were getting the ball inside in the paint as well. 8 of their first 10 points came inside the paint. They were attacking and getting downhill on Golden State, but defensively, unfortunately, weren't able to close the way that they wanted to and found themselves down at the end of the first quarter, 32-31, despite the fact that PJ Washington was able to shoot the ball extremely well in that first quarter. But the Mavericks found themselves again able to have an 8-1 run in the second quarter. They were able to take a 5-point lead with 3 minutes left in the first half after a Derrick Jones Jr. three-pointer, who was terrific in this game as well. He had 9 points, but it was more about his defense and the length and the athleticism and the way that he was able to defend Steph Curry and really giving him problems throughout the course of the night. We say Stephen Curry did finish the game with 28 points, but he really got going in the fourth quarter. But you saw the block shots that he had. He had a terrific block shot on a Stephen Curry three-point attempt on the right side of the basket, and he was able to really bother him at times. And Jason Kidd even talking about it post-game about the job that Derrick Jones Jr. did in guarding Stephen Curry, not just in this game, but what he's done to Stephen Curry throughout the course of the regular season. But the Mavericks, who I mentioned, had a 5-point lead with 3 minutes left in that second quarter, saw the Warriors again close the quarter well. They closed the first quarter with a 19-2 run. They closed the second quarter on an 8-1 run to be able to take a lead into halftime at 54-52. Stephen Curry had 6 points in the quarter, but again, the Mavericks, who had an 8-1 run of their own to take the 5-point lead, allowed the 8-1 run by the Warriors to be down by 2 going into halftime. More on this game as we go on throughout the course of the show, but before we get there, let's take a quick break here on Inside the Mavs and hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Thank you for hanging out through that break and hearing from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and hearing from Aura as the Mavericks get the 108-106 win at home over the Golden State Warriors, detailing how, again, a game of runs in this particular game. The Warriors closing the first quarter on a 19-2 run thanks to Chris Paul, who has continuously killed the Mavericks throughout the course of his career, played extremely well in this game for Golden State. In fact, started the second half for the Golden State Warriors, which we'll get to here in just a moment. But the Mavericks were able to come back in that second quarter, go on an 8-1 run to take a 5-point lead, but then the Warriors responding with an 8-1 run of their own to take what was a 2-point lead going into halftime. And coming into the second half, you knew that the Mavericks are going to have to battle and continue to keep themselves close in this game because of the determined way that the Warriors were playing throughout the course of the game. And you saw that in a back and forth third quarter as well, where the Mavericks were able to take a 3-point lead at the end of 3, despite the fact they went 0 of 5 from downtown. But P.J. Washington continued his stellar play, especially in the second half. He scored 7 of the Mavericks for 17 third-quarter points in that third quarter as the Mavericks shot 40% from the field. Kyrie Irving was able to get a nice and one on Brandon Pajemski with a hanging bang shot that had the Mavericks up by 2 with about 6 minutes left in that third quarter. Dante Exum knocking down a pull-up jumper to have the Mavs up by 4. Jaden Hardy also getting into the act as well, knocking down a running floater that had the Mavs up by 3 with 42 seconds left in that third quarter. But P.J. Washington continuing to remain aggressive, and I thought that was the hallmark and my biggest takeaway from this game when it came to the Mavericks and particularly P.J. Washington, is that throughout the course of the game, whether it was knocking down shots from 3, getting to the rim, there was a aggressiveness from P.J. Washington from the outset of this game that continued throughout the course of the matchup with the Golden State Warriors, that I really appreciated him taking on the onus, not just on the defensive end where he was causing havoc, getting in the passing lanes, being a disruptor on the defensive end with deflections and steals and getting out in the fast break, getting things set up in transition for the Mavericks, but offensively being confident, looking for his shot. And we've talked about this before when it comes to Washington, when he is being able to be aggressive and attacking the rim, getting some easy buckets at the rim, that confidence continues to grow for him. And you're seeing now him be able to knock down shots consistently from the outside, adding another dimension to this offense that the Mavericks are going to be needing from him as a guy who's going to be a third scorer for this team going forward here. Even with the struggles from Tim Hardaway Jr. in terms of his outside shooting, P.J. Washington has to be that third guy who can do things with more versatility in terms of his confidence and driving to the basket and then being able to finish with shots on the outside as well. And with the physicality and the length and athleticism that he provides on the defensive end, he's got a chance to be a terrific two-way player with more consistency and confidence in what they're going to be needing from him going forward. And if you can get that two-way aspect from P.J. Washington, now the Mavericks become that much more dangerous, because now you can't just leave him open as a shooter and hopefully that he doesn't make you pay. Now he's making teams pay by knocking down the three-pointer, going through this hot streak that he is right now, and it's adding another dimension to this offense. And you know what you're already going to get from PJ on the defensive end, or PJL, as my folks like to drop in on Twitter when it comes to PJ Washington. But he was terrific for them, especially in the second half, which gets us obviously to the fourth quarter, where things really heated up in this game between the Mavericks and the Warriors. You can tell for Golden State, who was trying to keep that win streak going, they've essentially locked up the top 10 spot in the West already. The Rockets continuing to falter. As I mentioned, they've lost 4 straight since winning 11 in a row, and the Golden State Warriors were looking to continue to put a stranglehold on that 10th spot in the West. Didn't necessarily need to win tonight's game, but you could tell they were playing with that kind of desperation to continue to try and play well as the season starts to wind down. But the Mavericks, going into that fourth quarter, began the fourth quarter up by 3. They went on a 5-0 run to take what was an 8-point lead, forcing a Warriors timeout with just a minute and a half into the fourth quarter. Eventually, it got up to 9, not once, but twice, including with 4.5 minutes left in the game at 101-92 after, again, another P.J. Washington three-pointer, a theme of the course of the game against Golden State. But the Warriors responded with that championship medal. They went on a 12-4 run, capped off by a Stephen Curry three-pointer that brought the Warriors to within 1 at 105-104 with 58 seconds left in the game. And that's when things started to really get tight, as you felt things starting to come down in the last minute of the ball game. But the Warriors unsuccessfully challenged what was a blocking foul on Stephen Curry with 22 seconds left in the game. Washington was able to make 1 of 2 free throws in that sequence there as the Mavericks were up 106-104. Then obviously Stephen Curry comes down on that left side, hits that baseline jumper to tie it at 106. But then the Mavericks were able to get a bucket from P.J. Washington. You think about Tim Hardaway Jr., big defensive rebound that he had in the game as well over Draymond Green. He was key in making winning plays for this team. We talked about the rebound that he had over Draymond Green, obviously finding P.J. Washington for the game-winning basket. on a terrific drive by Tim Hardaway, finding a cutting Washington on that right side of the basket. And as maligned as Tim Hardaway Jr. is on this team and by fans and folks who watch and support this team and cover this team, you give him credit for making the winning plays that he made tonight. The rebound, fighting over the, with the ball over Draymond Green, being able to get the game-winning assist over to PJ Washington to be able to win the game. Those are the little things that veterans are able to do and have to do in order to win games. And yes, you will look at his overall numbers. You say, Kevin, Tim Hardaway in 30 minutes of play was 4-13 from the field, just 1 of 7 from 3, was a -9 on the night. But at the same time, when you look at the plays that he made down the stretch when they needed him most, he was the one that was able to make key winning basketball plays to help his team win, and they were able to scrap it out and find a way to get the job done. But more on Washington, because this is something we talked about it, prior to the trade deadline. What were the options that the Mavericks could have available to them in order to try and improve this team on the fly? What you have to give them a ton of credit for, as I mentioned, 13-2 in their last 15 games, remaking their identity on the fly, turning themselves into a defensive team with length and athleticism that was bothering Golden State. You saw in this game, they forced 15 turnovers in the game, did the Mavericks themselves. And again, a lot of that had to do with the defense of PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. I thought Derrick Jones Jr. was spectacular. He was able to have a really dramatic effect on this game with the 3 blocks that he had. PJ Washington with the 5 steals and 2 blocks that he had, both of them being constant disruptors on the defensive end. And that's what the Mavericks have needed in terms of point of attack defense, but also length and athleticism to deal with guys on the perimeter and force offenses to be able to make different decisions based on the ability of the Mavericks to defend at a high level. And you've seen throughout the course of the second half of the season, particularly from the beginning of February, this has been one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. In fact, when you look at over the last 10 games, number 1 in defensive rating, a team that is constantly putting pressure on the ball. They're creating and getting into passing lanes, finishing out in transition. In this game, they had 17 fast break points to be able to turn defense into offense, and PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. were catalysts of that all night long. And that is going to be super important down the stretch. We know that the vertical game has started to go away, obviously, without Derek Lively in the lineup. You didn't have the versatility on the defensive end with Maxi Kleber being a part of the lineup. And that's something that I talked about on Twitter before the game started, which was, look, the Maxi Kleber injury is a big one. Even with the inconsistency that we've seen at times from him shooting the ball, this team relies on Maxi from a defensive perspective. And without him in the lineup, you get that much smaller. And the Mavericks were able to overcome that. We talk about that margin of error when it comes to the Mavericks in terms of the rebounding and having to stay within 3 to 5 rebounds of their opponent to be able to give themselves an opportunity to win this game. They did it once again against the best rebounding team, literally the best rebounding team in the NBA, and the Golden State Warriors, a top 3 offensive rebounding team and a top 5 defensive rebounding team in the league. The Mavericks were within 3. The Golden State Warriors won the rebounding margin 44-11, 44-41. But at the same time, the Warriors had 11 offensive rebounds. Dallas had 8. But within that margin of error, as they both had 33 defensive rebounds. Again, collectively as a team, they have to crash the glass together as a team to be able to stay in ball games without the services of Derek Lively in the middle. And you saw from Daniel Gafford, who was huge in that department, had 15 rebounds, including 4 offensive rebounds in the game. Kyrie Irving doing his part in rebounding as well. He had 8 rebounds in this game. So multiple guys collectively as a team being able to get on the glass, and they did a terrific job of that against the Golden State Warriors. But for Washington and Jones, setting the tone on the defensive end throughout the course of the night. Yes, Stephen Curry does what he does in the fourth quarter. You saw what he was able to do in getting the Warriors back in it. In terms of what he did in that fourth quarter, had 14 points. Gary Payton II had a big fourth quarter as well with 10 points in that quarter. But Chris Paul played well for the Warriors, but they were able to make sure that they took care of him in that fourth quarter. He played 7 minutes, only going 0 of 1 from the field in the fourth. But you saw what the Mavericks were able to do, and they did it well in the collective team defense that they had to play, and that was spurred on by P.J. Washington and Derrick Jones Jr., and you give them credit for the way that they were able to handle themselves on the end of the floor. So for the Mavericks, again, another big win. No Luka Doncic, who missed the game with knee soreness. We're hoping that he'll be back on Sunday against the Houston Rockets, with the Mavericks winning tonight against the Golden State Warriors. It takes a little bit pressure off of them in the game on Sunday against Houston. Houston is starting to fall apart. As I mentioned, they've lost 4 straight games after winning 11 straight. You were hoping if the Mavericks, if they had lost the game against Golden State, they would be able to bounce back on Sunday, especially thinking about the division record and trying to ensure that they had the tiebreaker over the New Orleans Pelicans. That's now wrapped up when you look at the division standings, as well as the Mavericks will finish with a better division record than the Pelicans. So you've got your tiebreakers in hand over the Suns. You've got it over the Pelicans. You're able to increase your lead over the Sacramento Kings, as you're now a full 3 games ahead of them. As far as the Western Conference standings are concerned, it's looking pretty good for the Mavericks to finish in the top 6 and most likely in the top 5. It's going to be very difficult to catch the Los Angeles Clippers at this point, as they were handling business against the Utah Jazz, who have basically just given up on the season at this point. So for the Mavericks, it's going to be about maintaining the 5th seed going forward. And with the rest of their schedule, as we look at it, of course, they've got the Houston Rockets on Sunday. They still got games against the Charlotte Hornets, the Miami Heat. Who knows how much Oklahoma City will have to play for, depending on what happens down the stretch for them, as they're in a battle with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets for the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Still a lot to be decided going forward in the final few games of the regular season. But for the Mavericks, you handled business. You were able to steal one without Luka Doncic, without Maxi Kleber, as well as hopefully Josh Green continues to be on the mend, and Derek Lively II continues to do the same as we move toward the end of the regular season and into the playoffs, where you feel a lot better and a lot more comfortable about the Mavericks positioning in the Western Conference to be able to finish not just in the top 6, but comfortably in the top 6, where they will need that rest as they watch these other teams play in the play-in tournament, as the Mavericks be able to get ready for what appears to be will be the Clippers once again in the first round of the NBA playoffs. But still a few more games to get to the end of the regular season. With their 47th win on the season, the Mavericks now need to finish just 3-2 to get to 50 wins on the season. I think they have a terrific opportunity to do that. And again, once Luka Doncic gets back, he can continue to resume his potential MVP season, although it looks like Nikola Jokic is going to win his 3rd MVP of the year. But regardless, it's been a terrific year for Luka Doncic and his teammates. A big confidence win for this team. Without Luka in the lineup, you saw it against Oklahoma City. Of course, as I mentioned, the Mavericks 13-2 in their last 15 games. The only 2 losses that they had was in the final game of their 5-game road trip against the Golden State Warriors. But prior to that, the only other loss was a loss at Oklahoma City, where they were extremely competitive in that game. Kyrie Irving scoring over 30 points in that game, but they didn't have Luka that night. But you saw a recipe for how they were able to play and play with confidence, even without Luka. And that game was on the road, and you could see how that was able to play out in this game against the Golden State Warriors, in a game where the Mavericks get their 22nd clutch win of the season, now 22-9 in clutch games this year. So again, continuing to prove themselves well with poise in the clutch, getting another good win led by their defense, and most importantly, the timely shot making of P.J. Washington with the confidence of getting to the basket, knocking down threes. Tim Hardaway Jr. making winning plays defensively. Derrick Jones Jr. handling his business. And Kyrie Irving, what can you continue to say about the way he's continued to be a leader on this team? You look at his numbers in this game. Yes, he had the 26 points, but as I mentioned, 8 huge rebounds in this game as well, to go along with 7 assists in the game. He was doing a little bit of everything to help this Mavericks team overcome a game Golden State Warriors team who was looking for their 7th consecutive win. So the Mavericks now get ready to conclude their final homestand of the season by welcoming in the Houston Rockets on Sunday afternoon, as hopefully the return of Luka Doncic will be there on Sunday as they get ready to finish out the rest of the regular season and solidify themselves in the top 6 of the West. But a massive win at home over Golden State, 108-106, 47-30 on the season, 24-15 at the AAC. The vibes are really, really good right now for the Mavericks, and more importantly, a confidence-boosting win without their superstar and Luka Doncic, withstanding the runs of the Golden State Warriors. And for the Mavericks, another notch in their belt on what has been an incredible second half for them this season, remaking this team on the fly, integrating PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford into the lineup, being able to turn themselves from an offensive team to a defensive team, but finding different ways to win, and more importantly, showing toughness and poise down the stretch in the clutch and making the right plays, the right basketball plays, Tim Hardaway Jr., to be able to win games for the Mavericks. So again, great win for the Mavericks. They'll have the day off on Saturday before they get back on the floor on Sunday against the Houston Rockets. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, thank you for joining me here on the show. Make sure you like and comment on the video if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. Let me know your thoughts on how the Mavericks were able to get it done against the Golden State Warriors, how you're feeling about this team with just 5 games to go in the regular season before we get ready for the NBA playoffs, feeling much better about their ability to be able to be in the top 6. And make sure you throw in a comment and let me know on the video as well. And also, write a review for the podcast. Give it a 5-star rating and be able to let me know how you feel about the Inside the Mavs podcast, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. That'll do it for Inside the Mavs here, right here on YouTube and, of course, on the podcast. You can catch me every Mavericks pre- and post-game show on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Until then, I'll talk to you later. Peace.